Beloved listeners of the Royal Levitical Priesthood Ministry, we bring a question before the text this evening. Is there any Bible prophecy news connected to the Middle East, especially in the areas of Persia, Elam, Edom, and Israel? And what does the drawn word say about the day itself? The lead of our passage is Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. Watch, I will send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And Adonai, whom you seek, will suddenly light upon his temple, even the angel of the covenant, whom you delight in. See, he will come, declares YHWH of Hosts. This is a prophecy of arrival, a sudden lighting upon the temple by him whom we long to behold. Yet where I sought that arrival within the sealed news digest of this day, I found it nowhere. Instead, the record shows people standing before his coming, crying out for mourning, while he remains unannounced, beyond their petition. Consider the prayer request itself. A leader sought Elul worship in the Gaza Strip but was denied even entry, so the very act of seeking God's presence met refusal at the border. Meanwhile, Malachi promises that he himself will enter without being asked. This reads less like fulfillment than as tension. The covenant faithful still cry out for mourning, yet the dawning they await arrives elsewhere, unannounced, beyond their asking. Every waiting thread of this day lives in expectation, but none arrives within its own frame, and I refuse to call any of it fulfillment. A second cluster turns on priesthood and its spoils, and here the connection is more structural than prophetic. The priestly tradition holds that those set apart shall eat the grain offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering, dwelling near the most holy things. I am their priestly possession, and every first fruit in Israel will be theirs. Against this sacred portion stands a different economy. Sanctions flowing outward toward Persia and inward through networks of cash transfer touching others in the region. The texts describe eating, the news describes transferring funds. One feeds priests, the other constrains regimes. They share vocabulary, such as portion and inheritance, yet point in opposite directions. Scripture grants, while policy withdraws. I found genuine resonance in one scene, though it connects by contrast rather than correspondence. There two men seized each other by the head amid civil war, an image of families turned against kin when sanctuary collapses. Set beside a settlement coordinator who entered a village without authorization and took the life of a young man, there is a shared grammar of boundary violations spiraling into bloodshed. Yet type does not equal antitype. In one case, the violence erupted internally between equals. In the other, it flows from outside authority onto the life of another. Both are breaches of order, yes, but neither names nor reverses what happened before, they merely resemble in shape. What most resists any link concerns judgment delivered through legal channels. Instruments appear that name a leader over the interception of a flotilla, and another orders criminal investigation into the killing of a young child and her family. A moral principle speaks plainly. It is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby your brother stumbles or is offended, or is made weak. Yet that principle concerns personal conscience regarding food and drink. It says nothing of warrants or tribunals. If anything, the gospel principle cuts against the day's tone, which treats accusation as political leverage rather than matter for tender regard. I will say plainly, no drawn verse addresses state power seeking to bind leaders' hands, so whatever analogy one wishes to draw remains unsaid. The absence worth holding most carefully involves prophecy itself. Malachi opens with arrival, and the closing of the drawn set grants license for a limited season while no messenger comes. Between them sit priestly inheritance, covenant portions, morning light, teachers who still need milk, all waiting imagery, all suspended. So too today, every event waits on something larger. Ceasefire statements wait on compliance that has not come, disruptions await reckoning promised yet unfulfilled, sanctions declare themselves undeterred. The parallel is real, that both sets live in expectation, but I refuse to call either fulfillment, since neither arrives within its own frame. Finally, some threads simply do not answer at all. 14 events cluster around escalation in the West Bank, movement of settlers, construction criticism, and warnings of brinkmanship. None finds a counterpart among these verses except faintly through a figure who found his brothers at Han, where pursuit becomes discovery rather than seizure. And the entire exchange between Yemen and Arabia, drones against an airport and a great refining facility, is wholly unnamed by Scripture here, leaving that front entirely without voice. So let me give you the answer plainly. The drawn word leans affirmative, but only in the sense of probable polarity. The pattern points toward yes at 97.7%, with no room for unresolved at all. Yet this verdict scores the drawn text against the corpus. It verifies no event, and it answers nothing about the actual condition of the world. Where prophecy speaks of sudden arrival, the day records only standing before that coming. Where Scripture grants sacred portion, the day withdraws provision. Where the priestly inheritance calls, the day offers only transfer of funds. No drawn verse confirms a Middle East prophecy news item, and no drawn verse describes the arrival Malachi promises. The correspondence is faint where it exists, and absent where it should be strongest. The lead verses drawn in this altar of reception session were Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, Romans chapter 14, verse 21, 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 16, Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 29, 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 9, 1 Samuel chapter 26, verse 19. 94 further verses were drawn in this session. This concludes today's interpretation at the altar of reception.